Peace and blessings. This is Misal Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, coming at you once again with another episode of Raw Talk. And I'd like to thank everybody for their support and hope they're doing as best as they possibly can. And, you know, this quarantine is a little bit crazy, you know what I'm saying? So, take off my specs a little bit. These are just readers and not even like real glasses like that. And it's a lot. I'd like to thank also everybody for checking out the last video about the genetic relationship, blood relatives between Europeans and African Americans or whatever. That was an interesting video. However, today we're going to be approaching a new topic, which is why Moorish American men do not spit on the ground. I always kind of thought it was a little bit peculiar, like when two men are approaching each other, like melanated men, that one feels so compelled by the appearance of an alike to cough up a body fluid. I thought that was like a little bit slightly queer behavior. I got a whole philosophy of that. I don't want to step on anybody's toes and stuff like that, but a lot of like what street culture, gang culture is like a form of homosexuality expressed through the sensuality of violence. Now, if you could swallow that mentally, then you understand a lot of the code of the streets, what it's based on. However, spitting on the ground, let me throw my glasses on. I'm gonna see if I can put up a share screen in this. Okay. Show y'all where this comes from. Just throw this up here right quick. And we don't want to be in the Zoom, right? We want to be on right here, on this section right here. And you can see some of the comments, but basically in ancient times, spitting was considered having the virtue of averting witchcraft. So it was a way to get off negative energy, you know what I'm saying? And me being, part of the, involved in arts of divination, I kind of knew this history a little bit, but I thought I would share it. However, this is not the reason why Moorish American men don't spit on the ground, not in the present age. I mean, it's been historically recorded. I'll try to pull it up in another video or whatever, some situations where Moors would spit at different people, I guess for just being who they are during the medieval times, whatever. I used to read about some of that. Let me just stop the share. Okay, there we go. I'm back on track. And here's a scenario I want to run by y'all. And this can also illustrate how a person could be a hood scientist and still, due to a lack of common sense, mislead people or take them down the wrong path or go down the wrong path themselves. And we're going to illustrate this through the art of spitting. So there's this dude on YouTube. This is a mythical person, but it kind of drives home the example. And he's going around like, oh man, you don't want to take the ancestral DNA test because you don't own your DNA and they could do what they want with it, whatever. That's not entirely a true statement. You know what I'm saying? I've been involved with DNA, as a lot of people know. However, let's just take that. This dude is saying some credible stuff. A lot of people who take the test for 23andMe and, Ancestry.com, they may not know the depths of, what the companies are capable of and that they really don't own the DNA sample that they submit. Okay. Now, this guy, he's adamant about this. So after he makes his YouTube video, he goes out in the street and he sees this other melanated brother approaching him, like an alike, and he's just like, oh, spit on the ground. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's tough, like, whatever. Okay. So 2 hours later, let me just say this. Usually if you walking down the block and you feel the need, you have to spit on the ground. That's constantly happening. Usually you're dealing in a neighborhood that's dealing with some issues or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, but this is what goes on. So, he passed the dude, spits on the ground, goes to the store, does what he has to do, get what he has to get, and goes back into the house. Now, 2 hours later, there's a homicide in the same area that he spit on the ground. So you see, it's taped off, the cops are out there, forensics is coming, and they just happen to take a cotton swab and stick into the puddle of saliva that he left 2 hours ago. And now guess who's going to jail? The dude who spit on the ground. So if you're going to get into this philosophy, oh man, you shouldn't take a DNA test, because the companies are, you shouldn't be spitting on the ground. Because a lot of people are giving their DNA away on the ground. They're just spitting on the ground, giving away DNA, and a crime scene happens, and then you wonder why, brothers who are innocent get locked up. And it's another lesson, for melanated people who don't have love amongst themselves. And that's how that works. You know what I'm saying? You want to go around looking at someone injecting a negative emotion and they trying to get to the same struggle as you are. You ain't really real like that, number one, because there's so many dimensions to self-hate. Anything from the economy of the neighborhood, like, it's crazy because a lot of people talking about, man, we locked down, we ain't free, and you promoting a culture that doesn't promote freedom. And this is why a lot of the movements in the conscious community can't get off the ground, because they're still in love with the streets, and the streets in ancient times was depicted as another world. And people who know mythology, people who know mysticism and magic know the netherworld has certain purposes. It does have to exist, but nothing grows there. So as long as you're in that state of mind, you can create some things in another world. All of us come out of another world in the sense that copulation is what brings us into the physical world. However, the netherworld in magic is usually used for a person to submerge himself, to tear down the ego. That's what it's used for. And then once the ego is torn down, they come out of it. That's why every, deity in ancient mythology took a journey through the netherworld, sometime the battle of beasts, which was like really the animal side, and to rise up above that. And that's a very strenuous process. It's not something that you read in a book or you think about, or you go into a room and you meditate for a couple of days. It's some serious stuff. It's a primal right. If you haven't been involved in that primal right, you just haven't been in it. You know what I'm saying? And then from that, you could see how the world operates because of the two spectrums of death and life. And when you go through the world of the dead, you know what I'm saying, you can understand from that zenith point how the world of life flows. You know what I'm saying? And so you can come up with all these intellectual ideas and stuff. But once you experience that initiation through the netherworld, then you can see everything that is associated with it, its behaviors, its attitudes, all these different things. And spitting on the ground is associated with the netherworld, and much more importantly, like some of the attitudes these dudes have in the quote unquote conscious community is just straight from the netherworld. That's why nothing grows. They have all this information and they can't produce anything. Like now, that thing is just like a church. For Generation X, the conscious community is the church that they fought against in the prior generation. It's the same thing. It's just that they're talking to you now within the vicinity of your home. So you want to feel good, you could turn these dudes on, and they're living the same hypocritical life that the reverends lived in the generation prior. It's the same thing, but nothing grows out of it because there's no virtue in it. It's just knowledge. It's just kinship with elements that do not cultivate the spirit. You know what I'm saying? And I hate to draw it up all like that because the video is really about spitting on the ground. You know what I'm saying? But that's just an action that goes back into some attitudes. However, for a person to do that today, and he's rolling through the neighborhood, he's making himself liable for a criminal investigation because they can take that swab, wipe it up against the cement, and say, wow, this person was here at this crime scene. You know what I'm saying? And, it's just crazy. You know what I'm saying? But this is how some people get caught up. Just like it's it's just crazy, man. I mean, really, the whole lesson in all of this is just to have love amongst yourselves. All that talk, knowledge talk, and all that kind of stuff, it really doesn't mean anything if you do not have a certain intention towards your A like your brother. And so this is why we see people who are quote unquote leading the conscious community. To me, all that stuff is just entertainment and book reports. You know what I'm saying? It's just a book report. Someone goes to the library, researches something, comes on YouTube and says what they learned, and now that's supposed to be, and people actually believe that's a form of salvation. That's like the same ignorance as a religion. You have to work on yourself. You know what I'm saying? I was like, there was two things that kind of changed my path. Um, like everyone else, probably people who are watching this video, I always had like a thirst for knowledge, you know what I'm saying? And I was born with a little bit of clairvoyance. Like a lot of times in ethnic families, there's always one who's born a little clairvoyant. So I had an extra thirst, you know what I'm saying, to figure out why was I experiencing certain things I was. And I wasn't really comfortable because growing up all the time, because in our community, unless you coming from like the continent, at the time I was coming up, there really wasn't a place where people could learn to utilize their mystical gifts, in the way that I came to express them. There are like avenues like Santeria and things of that nature, and those avenues have been around for a minute. But I wasn't exposed to that stuff, as a teenager or whatever. You know what I mean? And so, I had a thirst for knowledge like everybody else. And then one day I was like, you know what? Let me just be myself, man. Because these dudes, people want to be down with something, and it's good to be down with something. You feel like a little camaraderie. Everyone kind of needs that to some level. And you kind of learn a little bit about the history of people who look like you. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Still, it was one thing that was bothering me. And it was like, you know what? I was born into this situation, but that's not really expressly why I'm here. This is a situation that exists. It's like if you're born in a war. You're born in a war, which is kind of what the situation is. And you have to do what you have to do, but that's not the purpose of human existence. You see what I'm saying? And above all else, you have to get to that purpose of human existence and where you fit in it and how you can cultivate your soul beyond the conditions that are going on around you. You know what I'm saying? You still have to survive, you still have to be aware, but you're born into a situation that is not your life's purpose. And sometimes, a lot of times, people get distracted by that. You know what I'm saying? Where you want to be able to survive. It's a kind of an odd situation because you have to survive. You're born into this war. And then some people, it's like it's all about the war at that point. You know what I'm saying? But that's not the purpose of life. You know? And it kind of hurt me, man, because this dude, and I thought he was an all right type of guy, man. This dude, what's this guy's name? David Banner. I'm gonna see if I can find this. I should make a separate video about this. But he came out and said something. I'm gonna have to put this dude on the chopping block because he came out and said that King and Malcolm failed. And I understood what he was saying on some levels, but being a public figure, for you to come out your mouth and say some stupid stuff like that, you just can't come to New York even after the quarantine, B, at this point. Because those people, you don't know who they inspired. They changed worlds in the sense that they just changed worlds and gave people something to give of themselves. And what their purpose was just between them and the creator. Now they were born in the war, so they served in the capacity that they needed. But as far as the Most High is concerned, that wasn't their life's purpose. They could have did their duty and then came to another type of reality where they were working on themselves. And I'm sure they was working on themselves their entire life just to even get to the level of influence that they had at the time that they had, and to be able to sacrifice their life comfortably, you know what I'm saying? And just be like, yo, if it's for my people, then I'm good, So you have to come to a place in spirit. So there was work they were doing we don't even know about. But for someone to say that that person failed and they influence people's lives with like, look, man, I'm gonna go to college, man. I'm gonna lay this life alone. You don't know how many lives Malcolm influenced, King influeed, and for David Banner, for you to come out on a public platform and say that they failed. How about you failed as a rapper? Let's talk about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying, David Banner didn't put no stats up in the rap game, but someone looking on the outside, like you ain't a Jay-Z, you failed. You see what I'm saying? So you got to watch your tongue, man, because that's not right. You know what I'm saying? These people gave their lives, and you, 4 decades later, you like a middle-aged man are going to say something stupid like that. It's crazy, you know what I'm saying? What people, feel they can get into. And so I'm just getting into, I know this video is about spitting on the ground because I'm kind of done with that topic, but I just figured, like, let's just talk, as people, because there's a lot of situations going on. Some people are talking about, the coronavirus and how people of color being affected. It's not only people of color, a large Jewish population is being affected. And the media just don't really report on that because there's a couple of articles, you can look it up. And when the coronavirus first started taking off in New York, there was like 829 cases, and 100 of them were found in the Orthodox Jewish community. So that's like 1/8 of the cases. And that's when the total number of the diagnosed was at 800. And that number is way over the top now. You know what I'm saying? And so I see people online talking about people of color and the coronavirus. I don't really think that the virus was really angled at people of color. I just think um, people of color got to, they got to deal with their health differently. Sometimes I've heard people say, like, why are you eating like that? You know what I'm saying? That's not going to help you live longer. You can go outside and get hit by a car. You know how to respond to people like that? You respond to people like that by saying, hey, man, let's say that you bought a new car, right? And the car needs premium unleaded gas. Are you going to put regular unleaded gas in because no car lasts forever? No, you're going to try to get the best out of that engine. You're going to try to get the best out of that car while you're using it. So the physical body is like a car to the spirit. You're going to try to put the best in, not because you think that just doing that is going to give you an extra 10 years. It could give you an extra 10 years over someone who's not paying attention, but it's about being the best of your potential at the moment. That's what it's about. You know what I'm saying? And so all of these things lead to the same thing, being the best of your potential. And how do you reach that? Well, here's a couple of steps that are very simple. Why even, like, before I get into the steps, because I hate digressing, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, on video, a lot of things come into your mind, whatever. But it's like, you know, smiling is good for your health. You know what I'm saying? And this is like the 5 jewels in the Moorish science. People don't even discuss them. They're just discussing documents. And documents, those things are liable to change. That's why a lot of Moors are getting locked up. It's not successful because documents are liable to change. But if you can align your spirit with the 5 jewels, that's a star, you'll be in orbit. But a lot of people don't realize, oh man, the UCC code and, this article, that's like stupid stuff, man. All you have to do is live a virtuous life and The energy from your virtuous life breeds prosperity. Your emotional state creates reality. So when you follow these clowns on YouTube who talk a whole bunch of stuff that sounds witty and knowledgeable, but they're not bringing out the best of your spirit, what happens is the people go back to their neighborhoods. They have this anger against someone that they have no contact with. So now they're housing this anger, and they're only able to turn it against each other because they're not being taught how to love. They're only being taught, how to be angry, like to hate this dude, but they have no contact with him. So now they have to express this because it's in their system, and they're only going to express it between each other. That's how that works. That's how genocide works. So the people who are getting the people angry are actually the ones who are instrumental in creating the genocide, when you could be getting these people, to advance on diet. You know what I'm saying? Like, we still dealing with diabetes at this age in 2020. Different things of that nature. Now, 70, like a lot of people are pre-diabetic. 75% of Americans, I did an article on my blog page. You could look it up. You could take this line and look it up. 75% of Americans are dehydrated. They're dehydrated. What are they doing in the hood? You know what I'm saying? And so these things, you could be bringing people to a better place, but you want to get them upset over some 400 years stupidity that is not their reality today. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like you're looking at the videos and stuff, and the word European is being passed around throughout the entire video. Like the word European is being passed around long before the word Moorish, African, all this other crazy stuff, to create this tincture of hate. Like, he did it to you, he did it to you. You know what that's called? That's called black magic. And I'm gonna give you an example. Like, um, I'm sure my brother Sharif will understand, because this is a martial arts thing. Even though he's more into the Chinese side, I study the Japanese side. I study tattoosu, what some people call ninjutsu. Well, ninjutsu is like not really a true term, but the ninjas studied different fighting arts. Okay, but in that history, I also studied Shinto as well, which is like a Tao in Japan. But to make a long story short, a lot of times the ninjas themselves was like spiritualists, some of them, you know what I'm saying? And what they would do if they had an enemy is they would bury a dog in dirt, and they will only leave the dog's head out. And then they will push food away from the dog just enough that he couldn't reach it. And this is crazy, because when you think about it, it's the same thing that's dealing with melanated people in America today. So what the ninjas would do, they would bury this dog, and they would leave only the head out. And then they would put a plate of food in front of the dog, but they kept it at a distance where only like he could smell it, but he couldn't eat it. And they would say to him, he did this to you. 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 And so what would happen is, when the dog died, his spirit would attack the dude that they said did it to him, even though it was them doing it to the person. And that's what you see online with these YouTube videos. You see people who are in the audience, they're buried in dirt. They really can't get the resources that they need, but they can see these things in front of them. They can even walk through the same neighborhoods, and then you got someone whispering in your ear, he did it to you, he did it to you, he did it to you. So now you frustrated, and you ready to come out and latch on everything that is in existence. So you reach out to what's closest to you, and that's your own people. And that's why we have these problems. You know what I'm saying? I never really wanted to come out and make videos. I was like a writer dude. Like, I don't think my face looked that great. You know what I'm saying? All this crazy stuff that I had in my head or whatever. And then I start really looking at what these guys were saying online. I mean, some of this stuff is even laughable when you could really see what's really going on. And I was just like, man, I gotta say something. So, I got a background and everything, and the more science, whatever. So I was like, you know what? These brothers I met, their plan is probably the best out of all the plans I've seen. It does need a little tweaking, not because the plan itself is corrupt, but because the people in it, they want to turn it into something else. You know what I'm saying? Um, Stuff like that or whatever. But against a lot of other plans and stuff, some of the stuff these dudes is talking about is whack, and they constantly talking about stuff that don't make no sense. The first thing you want to do is get people to a level where they can appreciate each other, and you it doesn't always have to be through a means of hate. And here's why. That's why we're taught learn how to love instead of hate, because the main reason of what keeps melanated people behind the 8 ball is the hate that they have for other people. That's the thing that keeps them behind the 8 ball. I'm gonna tell you why. And it's also a trick. Here's how the trick works. Like I said in the beginning, you're born into life. Now, the conditions that you're born into could be a war, so you have to survive while you're on the battlefield, but that's not your purpose in life. You understand what I'm saying? So you always want to keep that in mind. But the main thing that I've seen that holds our people back is a lack of reverence for the ancestors, and like taking their situation with the Most High above all else. Because what happens is when your focus is off of that, you focusing on what someone else is doing. Oh, they doing this now. And making all these conspiracy theories and stuff. And just stupid when you should be focusing on your relationship, because you don't want to lose that relationship with your ancestors and the Most High. That's the foremost thing. These dudes on YouTube talk black consciousness and still haven't had a medicine man, a witch doctor, none of that on that. The people that lead you into ancestor worship is a hoax. It's a hoax. They're not going to have it because, first of all, them dudes ain't even going to co-sign with the theme of the show. Number one, I'm a medicine man. They're not even going to co-sign with the theme of the show because it's garbage. They're not taking people where they should be taken. They're taking them off the ancestor worship and the reverence of the Most High. So when you take people off of that, they're focusing on putting patches up in society on what someone else is doing, and every nation got their own flaws and stuff. So you can continue pointing that stuff out, but that's not going to help you put food on your table. It's just that simple. You know what I'm saying? Even when you look at the Circle Seven, that has nothing to do. It says like give Christianity back to the Europeans because that's their creed and stuff. And that's it doesn't say anything degrading. It doesn't say, you know, all this stupid stuff that these dudes is echoing in their videos. It says a couple of things, but it's nothing to degrade a person because of how they came into the world, but to be made aware of like certain intentions that people may have towards you. You know what I'm saying? But it's not about like being overly absorbed in the evils that someone else is doing, because you will become like that because you're not focusing on your relationship. It's like, let's say a dude, you know what I'm saying, you have a beautiful lady at your house and you focusing on some chick that you're not even attracted to and what she's doing your whole entire time in the relationship. What are you doing to yourself through that process? And this is what's going on in the community. You know what I'm saying? And so I figured, like, if I was tired of it, maybe other people may just be tired of the nonsense too. You know, if you are not progressing as a people, I always say history always repeats itself for people standing in the same place. You know what I'm saying? You stand in the same place for the past like 40 years, and these people have no discipline, they have no structure, they have no cultivation, they don't have no history of cultivation. All they have is a history like, I'm down with this dude. I was down with this dude when I was young, or I'm down with this person. And that's what is usually said in the world of corruption, you got to know somebody to be this. So this is what this comes to now. You got to know someone to be a frontline leader in the Black community. Or maybe you should have a good idea or something. Or maybe you may have a way to treat a formula, but all the stuff y'all putting out ain't working. And a lot of Moors, they follow this. You know what I'm saying? Because they're following the okie doke. Look at the Circle 7. I mean, actually, it don't really say anything about, other people the way these dudes is getting it. It focuses more about how to be a man, how to be a husband, how to obey the law, how to cultivate yourself through metaphysical and metaphoric examples. And that's all the Circle 7 deals with. But you dudes is getting so overly absorbed in somebody else that it's made you that individual. You know what I'm saying? You go online, Asian people are receiving a lot of hate because for some reason, people think that this thing erupted in China with the coronavirus, and it has something to do with the dude that has a Chinese restaurant on 127th and 3rd Avenue. I don't get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't get it. So now there's hate expressed towards the Asian community. And the way the Asian community came into America is not too far off from how the Black community came into America if you study history, right? They're just trying to do what they're trying to do and to get survive like everyone else. But then we look at the cameras, you got some melanated dude, some Black dude, 'cause he is Black if he's in a certain state, and just acting ignorant towards these people. Now you gave these people some sort of like trauma, and he expects his karma to be okay. Maybe it is okay because the condition he is even to do some stupid stuff like that. But this is what's going on. Instead of the leaders in the community speaking out about it, like, hey man, you want to have your mask on, you want to have your gloves on, you want to don't, it's not about them. We don't have that. All we have is like political, we have people who have a platform, who have audience, but they're not speaking on anything that can improve the condition of people. They know everything that happened 400 years ago, but they don't have any knowledge about what's going on today. You know what I'm saying? And that's what that is. So spitting on the ground is just a typical example of just some of the stupid stuff on how people are treating each other. And they expect the progress like that. You know what I'm saying? And so um, you know, there's even deeper levels I can get into this conversation. You know what I'm saying? However, I was just like start coming on the horn because I was just kind of like just blanketed with the stuff I'm starting to see on YouTube and just some of the ignorance. You know, like we became the racist. You know what I'm saying? Like if anything, we became the racist. You got Lime's gonna open up on it because a lot of people got a lot of time to watch videos now because they're in the home, so we can talk right now. You know what I mean? So it's like, opening up on other communities, that's not going to help you. And in some ways, those communities would never see things on your level because it's a trauma that you dealing with. You know what I'm saying? And you have to, find the best resource to heal through that. Because like you look, these, I have friends in a lot of different communities. You know what I'm saying? Real good people in a lot of different communities. And even me, being a shaman, being a descendant from the jinn myself, it's like I'm kind of put in a box a little bit outside because I don't, because the perspective is just different. You know what I'm saying? When you're dealing with like living in one world where you can see behind the veil and then the world where no one sees behind the veil, you kind of see certain things from a different perspective. I'll just say it like that. In any case, you know what I'm saying? You got people, I've been told by people that a lot of white people in America feel guilty about what happened. You know what I'm saying? And, I guess people try to do what they can to move past it. But for the most part, 400 years ago, it ain't on a lot of people's minds. You know what I'm saying? Like in different communities, it's just not because their focus is on building buildings, acquiring real estate, and making sure that they can secure enough wealth to not get by. To get by for the next 3 generations. You talk to someone in community of melanated people, Moorish people, whatever, and they just want to be comfortable. Being comfortable doesn't secure anything for your children. It just means that you could pay your rent for 3 months. And that's what they want out of life, to pay their rent for 3 months. Okay. And these people are going to lead other people into a better condition. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to work. That's not going to work. You know what I'm saying? You have to really think out the box to be able to create a better environment for yourself if you're coming from one that is tremendously broken down. You know what I'm saying? And you have to get out of that like we all do. We all have to improve ourselves just to get to a place of realizing our purpose in life, because that's one of the most important things that we could do, is to get to a place where we can fortify our souls, or let our souls, which are made perfect, let it shine out. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what this journey is about. You know what I'm saying? But if you get stuck in one of these physical ruts of like hate and stuff like that, you ain't gonna make it out anywhere. You know what I'm saying? And what could you do for anybody else? So now a lot of black people are viewed as the most racist people on earth. Chris Rock said it in a joke and no one catch it. He was like, who's more prejudiced, white people or black people? Black people. You know why? Because we hate black people too. And that's how people see it. You know what I'm saying? They'll come up and they'll talk to the dude at the job who's sweeping the floor, who had basketball dreams, and they'll talk to him when they got a complaint about something going on at the job, because they figure every black person's that miserable. So if I talk to him, he's going to even bring out more misery. You know what I'm saying? And there's no happiness. So how could there be any prosperity? Like I said, happiness, smiling is good for your health. This is clinically proven. So if you're in a state of unhappiness constantly, and every little thing, oh, this happened 130 years ago. I can't do this because this happened 200 years ago. What are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing, really? You know what I'm saying? You can't live like that. You putting yourself in prison. Then the people in your community, they ain't free to express themselves. Then you got Moors coming on talking about, you know, Europeans and stuff like that. And you know what? Let me just say this, B. When you study from different angles, here's something to think about. Civilization was created by melanated people, right? But there's no history of slavery in the hunting-gathering era. Slavery started with civilization. Okay, so we know who created civilization. You know what I'm saying? Slavery started within the confines of civilization. For those who don't know, like in shamanism, there's 4 phases of human existence. There's hunting gathering, which is like more of an infancy stage. You start learning the earth, you become familiar. That's where there was nomadic culture to move throughout the earth, and these dudes exchange secrets. Like not exchange secrets, but they exchange technologies, and that gave birth to civilization. There were some things in hunting gathering culture that wasn't really like cool like that. For example, if you in a mountainous region and you know a woman's husband goes out and then these dudes rob him for whatever he had, like fishing, and killed the dude, he had no protection. That was just it. You know what I'm saying? There was nothing. So civilization brought some good things, but like every phase of human development, it brought slavery. Okay. Now, but civilization was good because today we can go to the market and we can get foods from all across the world and it's like nothing. You know what I'm saying? People can, it's just a whole different dynamic. But now the era of civilization is coming to a close, right? It was a European idea to abolish slavery, right? So this is what the hate that people are focusing on. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Out of civilization will come a global society. And once the global society fully amalgamates amongst itself, the final phase of celestialization, when man can reach a point in technology where he can see, whether it's spiritual and physical, the balance between the both, where he becomes to realize that there are also others within the universe. Okay. These are the four phases, according to alchemy and shamanism, that the human race is going as. So you have to look at, in the future, in a global society, the idea that people divide themselves up in color will be prehistoric ignorance by future generations in the future. They'll be like, man, people really did that? It's coming. Aristotle lived like in the 15th century, right? This dude came out and said that there would be a point in history where music could be sent at great distances. They wanted to lock this dude up and say that he was insane. Today, it exists. You know what I'm saying? There will come a point where man who divided himself up into different colors will be conceived as a like, it would be seen like an ignorant idea, like a caveman idea. But it's very rampant today. So you want to make sure that what you sailing can last centuries on in the future as part of wisdom. You don't want to be that reactionary. And when you look at man's purpose and where he's going, then you know how to navigate in the present time. You know what I'm saying? That's going to happen. Global society is going to happen. And it's nothing, and that's what should happen. You know what I'm saying? Because when you look at the technology, it supersedes boundaries. It's only inevitable. People are learning about each other. They're learning that they're pretty much the same. You know, now you stuck with this other stuff. You can just improve yourself to a point where it's unbelievable that something like that happened to you, or you can take a path of victimhood where everyone will believe that it happened to you because you keep re-emphasizing the same things over and over again that happened in a whole different era. And that's really what Drew Ali's intentions were when bringing the Moorish Science Temple to bat. Was like, look, leave that stuff out to, like, it happened, but you got to progress as an individual today. You have to cultivate yourself. Don't forget that you are a seed and the thought of Allah subscribed into this world. So you have to get to that purpose. He said it in a different way than I'm saying, because in some ways I'm a shaman. He was dealing with Islam, Sufism, but it's pretty much the same thing. You have to get to who you are in view of the spiritual universe. That's the important thing. So I made some decisions. First decision was, instead of memorizing what someone said, I could be learning the 7 Hermetic laws. I could use my memory for that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's going to advance me to an understanding, because the world is ruled by mystics, alchemists, and magicians. So let me get to a level that I can understand. Let me learn astrology. Let me learn these sciences. And they're learned through initiation. Like, to study them separately, that's savage. But to learn them in the body of the Sephoric view is how it's accomplished, because that's why they interrelate, because they're coming from one whole system. You know what I'm saying? And those are some of the things that kind of helped me along the way, man, in my life. It just changed dramatically to the point where people who knew me, some of them don't even recognize me today. You know what I'm saying? But it made my spirit like the freedom I experience, you know what I'm saying? Where I don't have to subscribe to a view just because someone said it 100 years ago or whatever. I can subscribe to my intuition. That's the most important thing, because that is in conjunction with a divine power. You see what I'm saying? So you see the people, you know, they'll be coming on YouTube cloaked up in whatever Halloween costume they have, or whatever, and they're saying all this stuff in the beginning. I give honors, da da, whatever. Why not give honors to the audience for viewing it? Why not do that? Let's start with that. You know what I'm saying? Let's deal with something that's present. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with those things, and there's nothing wrong in the tradition of those things because that's how you keep those elements pure. I'm not saying that. However, there's room in what everyone is dealing with to evolve spiritually, to evolve mentally. And when that really goes on, you're in a state of peace that, you know, that you ain't gonna allow any like ferocious talk or any foolishness into your environment. And you have to be very strong about that because you don't have a lot of time on this sphere. And if you don't achieve those accomplishments, then who knows when your consciousness can see the light of day again. You know what I'm saying? So you want to do all that you can to ensure that you get to where you are, and that helps out the entire human race because that becomes a star in the memory of men that is truly benevolent. And that's what and all of us have that potential. You know what I'm saying? And so all of us is all a human family. You know what I'm saying? But more specifically, what we dealing with, a lot of people of color become devils, man, because I mean, I saw it in the video, man. When I did that video about DNA and African American Europeans, it was just crazy, man. Within 12 hours, I'm getting invited to a cuckold ceremony. Then, some people were saying certain things that, just wasn't even correct or whatever. And it was just like, man, this is crazy. And no one put too many comments up because no one wants to say anything that's out the mechanical hypnotism of either I give honors to the prophet or they lied again. No one wants to get out the mechanics of stuff. So when you come with information that's not really new, it's just a different vantage point. Thinkers will know how to respond, but people who don't think don't know how to respond. And I saw like a lot of hate, and it's sad because to be in that condition is a sad state because you allowed someone to turn your soul into something hateful. You know, even like as a martial artist, right? Even as a martial artist, right? Here's something to think about. A lot of times, like when the samurai was doing their thing, they was just doing their thing. They didn't have whatever malice they had. It was to the point that they were carrying out the will of heaven and earth. So it was nothing personal. Let me tell you something, and I'm going to end it about this because there's a lot of things that you could do instead of spitting on the ground at the sight of each other. You can do a lot of different stuff. But if you don't set that tone, you have no control over your neighborhood. But if you set that tone, you will have control over your neighborhood. It's just that simple. Hey man, how you doing? How's everything going, brother? You have changed the control of your neighborhood just through that action alone. So we'll see who's the real sucker after this. But let me just say this, like one of the things I had learned in martial arts that was really kind of great was how it started. We start talking about the hunting gathering culture, right? So man was primarily innocent at that time. If your whole task in life is going into the jungle to get some food, ain't too much lying going on and stuff like that. And everyone had to accomplish this task. And a lot of times in the society, all those people were related in the village. There's not too much lying going on or other things that are going on. Those things wasn't introduced to man at that point. Okay. So when you look at, let's say something was to happen, let's say someone tried to attack an individual, they considered that like a person being possessed by an evil spirit, right? So how martial arts began, not began, but because it kind of came from a different place into our phenomenal reality, was like if a person was possessed so much by evil spirit that they sought to attack an individual, the medicine man would strike the person in certain chakra points to release that spirit from possession of that individual. And if it was overly possessed, they had to release that spirit from the physical coffin. It may have suffered this person's life. You know what I'm saying? But actually, that person would have thanked the medicine man because they would rather be uh, would rather give their life than be possessed by an evil spirit. You see what I'm saying? And that's how much love that they have for humanity because they knew the real view. You know what I'm saying? Now you in here, you talking about the ancestors this and the ancestors that or whatever, and you can't even get on with their descendants. You're full of shit. You know what I'm saying? Like you talking about the ancestors this and that, you can't even talk to their descendants, who are also your family. You know, like not even like, you know, like alike, that's one of the descendants of your ancestors. And you can't even talk to them. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you all of us have the potential to become greater than what we are. And that's where our focus should be. You know what I'm saying? Dude gonna say stuff to put us down. That's on them. Let them deal with that karma. You know what I'm saying? We have to focus on our relationship with the ruling powers of the universe. And that's that. Dude wants to, he has to deal with all those things because here's something, I'm gonna sum it up with this. There are rules in life. You know what I'm saying? There are rules in life. And I'm gonna talk about this with the middle passage shortly. In another video that's coming up because I don't want to exhaust the length of this video. However, there's rules in life. You know what I'm saying? Some people come on YouTube and have you think that on some fairy tale stuff where everything was perfect and then someone came along, evidently there were some rules that were broken and they resulted in certain things. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, everything has its time. Everything shall come to pass. You know what I'm saying? Because life is moving. And the main thing is we want to be moving with it because we want the best for those who are coming behind us. So if you love your children, you know, even like as far as like loving yourself, you want a prosperous future, follow the rules of prosperity. Don't follow this like crackhead consciousness. You know what I'm saying? Follow the rules of prosperity. And, you know, you can believe in many things that are not necessarily the same thing between each other. However, make sure what you believe in is something that's bringing the best out of you without dealing with you over analyzing someone else. Deal with your relationship with that higher power. Forget all that other crazy stuff because that's not going to take you where you need to go ultimately. And your children, your grandchildren, all of them will eat good. You know what I'm saying? So this is me, Sal Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, coming at you, you know, once again with another episode of Raw Talk, man. Let's get it right. Let's do it. Peace.